Welcome to From Caving In to Crushing It, the podcast for those who find themselves immersed in adversity and choose to write their story instead of having others write it for them. I'm Drew Deraney, and I'm your host. Andrea, it's so good to see you.
Hey, Drew, thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. You're welcome. You're welcome. So, I don't have to tell you because I know we talked a little bit before, but I pride myself on with this podcast to really get to the essence of my guests, who they are and how they got to where they are. And we all know that life is not linear. And I mean, you don't wake up when you're first born and say, I know what I want to do. Life has another idea for you. So I'm very impressed for where you are now, and I'm intrigued about how you got to where you are. So you can go back in life as far as you want or as recent as you want, and let the audience know really some defining moments in your life that really help shape you to who you are now.
You know, it's so funny because when you're going through it at the time, obviously you have no clue of the direction your life is going to take you. But I was always the publicity chair. In middle school, I was the one putting the posters around town. In high school, I was the one who had a weekly column in the local newspaper, stuff happening at the high school. So I was always in public relations without truly realizing that I was in public relations. And because I was a journalist in high school, I thought I wanted to be a journalist. And I would tell everyone I'm going to UCLA. Well, I'm a Jersey girl. I had no clue what UCLA meant. I didn't know really where it was. I mean, we didn't have the internet. I didn't know any of these things, but I'm not thinking I'm going to be a journalist and I'm going to go to UCLA. And then I said, no, I'm going to be a broadcast journalist and I'm going to be the next Dan Rather. So, of course, I'm dating myself for other folks that are listening today. But I went to Glassboro State College in New Jersey, which is now called Rowan University. And I was studying broadcast journalism, radio, TV, film. But I was always the PR director of every organization. So I took one PR class, one Introduction to Public Relations. I didn't need to take any others because I was living it. I was doing it. I was making sure that our events were covered in the local press. I was making sure people attended events or knew about thought leaders. So I was doing all of that in college while I was majoring in broadcasting. And when I graduated in my little navy blue suit with the blouse that had the tie attached to it and my little blue pumps and my little brown briefcase that mom and dad bought me for graduation with my initials etched on it, I walked into CBS. Right in New York City, I walked in. It's the late 1980s. And they said to me, okay, you're a woman. You have to take a typing test.
Oh, my.
You got it. So the men did not have to take a typing test. The women had to take a typing test. Hard to believe that this happened in our lifetime. And of course, I'm a very, very, very fast typist because I'm a fast talker and I'm a fast thinker. Right. So the thoughts would go straight from my brain to my fingertips to type. And I got a job in CBS. There was a freeze in broadcasting. So I got a job at Woman's Day magazine. CBS owned magazines at the time. Okay. And I had to start as an administrative assistant, which lasted 6 weeks because then I got promoted to advertising trafficking and advertising layout for Woman's Day magazine. So I was the person actually measuring to the 16th of an inch the film that would be sent for a 4-color ad in a magazine. And I was determining which page it would go on based on the specs and the purchase until the freeze was lifted in the broadcast area. And I got a job in media relations for the CBS radio division nationwide. And here I was now writing my press releases and arranging interviews and everything. But I had a boss who took all the credit and did not want to give me opportunities.
Interesting.
She did not want that. And
now it's interesting. When you said you had a boss who didn't want, right away, automatically, Drew assumed the boss was a man.
No,
and the boss wasn't. And now this is even more intriguing, Andrea.
Exactly, because the boss is a woman, and who had the job for many, many years. And every 2 years or so, she'd rearrange her office. That was it. She had the same office, the same job every year. The same things happened. Once in a blue moon, something different. But when you're doing the broadcast for the baseball all-star game, it's the same every year. You might change the names of the announcers because you're publicizing the broadcast. You're not publicizing who's in the game.
Interesting. Okay.
That's Major League Baseball's doing that.
Right.
We want coverage on our broadcasters.
Okay.
That's what we're doing. And as I grew, and I made a lot of wonderful relationships there, and I learned a lot because I was the person on site when we would have Neil Sedaka in studio for a national broadcast. I was there with the photographer. And I was there when Debbie Harry was in studio, and all of these celebrities at the time, music folks in studio. And I'd be there with the photographer, making sure we got the right press photos. And so I met such wonderful people and learned a lot from the people who weren't wonderful.
Well,
and
sometimes
I think
that's the most valuable lesson is you learn what not to do by some of those not wonderful people. So that's a very good point.
And you remember those, I could tell you stories about some of these celebrities, but I'd rather focus on how wonderful someone like Neil Sedaka or Debbie Harry. Now, Debbie Harry's a Jersey girl from Hawthorne, New Jersey.
Did not know she was from Hawthorne.
Hawthorne, New Jersey. And I'm a Fair Lawn girl in New Jersey. So next town over. So we had a lot of wonderful things to talk about. And Mickey Dolenz, I was a huge fan
Oh my gosh, the Monkees.
The Monkees. Yeah. When I was a kid, everyone loved the Beatles, and I loved the Monkees. I guess I was a little crazy there, but
that's all right. So I like the Monkees too. Yeah.
But he was just so nice, and so many others who really were wonderful, and the ones who weren't, I stopped listening to their music. And to this day, if I have the radio on and a song comes on by one of those artists, my husband knows we changed the channel. If he couldn't be nice to the people, the producer. And the PR person, then you know what? No, I don't need to support that. But I loved the PR end of things. And when I saw that my boss was not going anywhere, I said, I have to.
Yes.
And I went to the PR agency side of things, and I worked on the agency side for my career. PR agencies in New Jersey, and then a PR firm in Los Angeles area. Until I started Andrea Pass Public Relations 5 years ago. And so each one of these steps took me to that point. And I know you and I had a conversation a number of weeks ago when I was telling you about a bully boss I had. Now, that was a man.
I do want to hear that story again if you want to tell that one. You got through that pretty well.
Yeah. And quite honestly, for your listeners, if you are experiencing a bully boss, it's not you. It's them. Get the experience, hold your head up high, and then leave and be successful. And that's what I did. He was someone that I knew from a prior PR firm. And he then started his own agency. And so I reached out and he hired me on the spot. And I started a few days later. And I stayed for 8.5 years.
Wow. Okay.
I loved my clients. Absolutely loved my clients. I loved many of my coworkers. I can't say all, but many. And he was a bully. He wanted you working from 7 a.m. till 9, 10 at night. He wanted you working every holiday, every vacation, every weekend, every event. This was his world. He traveled constantly. And he would dictate from wherever he was. And every Sunday morning came those nasty emails. You didn't do this. Why didn't you do that? You should. Yet, as the vice president of media relations, I was successful. Not only was I bringing in the business, I was securing top level press coverage. My clients were happy. Not a single client complained.
That's awesome. And that's what you strive
Not a single complaint, but it was never good enough for him. But the clients were thrilled. I remember there was one point I was in Disney World, and I get a phone call, from the boss. You didn't do this.
And you were in Disney World for pleasure or business?
Yeah, pleasure. That was
pleasure.
my vacation.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
My vacation that was approved. And I had an approved vacation. And you didn't do this and you didn't do that and you didn't do this and the client, blah, blah, blah. And I'm saying, that makes no sense. So I call the client. Okay, president of a company,
Yeah.
billion-dollar company, whatever. He says, Andrea, aren't you on vacation?
Yeah.
I said, yes, I hear you're upset about XYZ. I said, I wanted to make sure it was handled. He says, I don't know where you would get that from. I said, the owner of the company called me. He says, I haven't touched base with him in ages. You're the person I talk to.
Wow.
Go on your vacation. I don't know what he's talking about.
Interesting.
And he would make things up.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, good for you to realize that it wasn't you, it was him, and you were still able to thrive in an environment like that. That's extremely challenging.
I used to joke, and me and the other VP, there were two VPs, and we used to joke that we would be really skinny if you lost weight crying because we were constantly crying. How unprofessional. But what he put us through emotionally,
yeah.
And she had to deal with it other ways because it was terrible.
Right.
What both of us were going through with this person. But here's where the change happened.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I went to hear Mitch Albom speak.
Oh, yes.
Mitch Albom wrote Tuesdays with Morrie, The
Love
7
that
People
book.
You Meet in Heaven,
Yeah.
Detroit Free Press sports reporter, ESPN. And my husband and I were going to this lecture. We thought it would be really interesting at a local university. And then the next day we were going to travel to Maryland to our friend's daughter's wedding.
Okay.
Okay. Before we go that Friday, the boss dictates all these things he needed done before Saturday night. Made up work, totally made up work. The
Right.
interviews were booked. The media training had happened with the client, but he decided each client needed a 50-page manifesto before each interview of analyzing previous interviews that this reporter had done. No client was reading that.
No.
It was busy work. And I'm thinking, I can't go to the lecture. I can't go to the wedding. And I'm an absolute wreck. And my assistant was so sweet. She said, Andrea, I'll work on the document. You go to the lecture. Call me afterwards tonight. And I'm a wreck. I didn't even want to get out of the car. So here we are hearing Mitch Albom. And I'm kind of summarizing, but what he said was, at the end of your life, no one's going to remember that you won an award or you saved a company X number of dollars or that you made X number of dollars. At the end of your life, people are going to say, that was a good person. I'm going to miss that person. That person touched my life. And as I'm hearing this, I'm having this moment.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And I said, you know what? I've already touched so many lives. My clients are thrilled with my work. My clients care about me. Coworkers, people I've met, the relationships I've built. And that was the moment that I said, I've got to make a change. I can't do this anymore. Wow. So as a public relations professional, I was going to a conference and he was coming to the conference as well. But the competing public relations firm was going to be at this conference.
Interesting. I can just feel something cool coming here.
Oh, Drew, this is great. When my boss said to me, I have to go take a call in my room, I said, all right, I'll catch up with you, about an hour or so. So I knew I had a window.
Yep, you had the window. Yeah.
I went over to the booth of the competing PR firm, knowing who very well that the woman standing there was the owner of the firm. Right. I said, are you so-and-so? She says, yes. I said, hi, I'm Andrea Pass. She says, I know who you are.
Wow.
And I said, can you step away from your booth to talk to me for a minute? She steps away from her booth. I said, I'm looking to make a career change. She said, when can you start? It wasn't even 10 seconds when she offered me the job.
I love it.
And so remember that your reputation matters.
Yes.
And I had a great reputation.
Yes, you did.
And therefore people knew who I was in this particular industry.
Wow.
And I said, this was April. I said, I'd like a little time off. I went right to work right after college.
Yeah.
Then I had my children, but I worked while I was on maternity leave.
Wow.
Then, I never had other than a vacation, but a vacation I worked during every
Right. Yeah.
vacation.
Yeah. You got calls. Yeah.
And she said, how about after Labor Day?
Oh, that's nice. That gives you another like a month or so. Yeah.
It was April,
Yeah.
Labor Day to September.
Oh, to
I had
September.
to,
I'm thinking Memorial Day. It's Labor
no,
Day.
Labor Day. And I'm
Oh
thinking I have to give
God.
notice. I have to go through all of
Well,
that,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and that night at the conference, there was a big party. The former boss to be never went to parties.
Okay.
Now, parties are where you get to know people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Socialization in business is very important.
It is. Absolutely is.
And to get to know someone that you're not talking business, maybe you're talking about travel or your family
Yeah, that adds
or a
dimension.
concert or a movie or a Broadway show or a sporting event. That strengthens relationships.
Yes, absolutely.
And so when I got to this party, I guess the new boss said, already told her coworkers, and every single one of them was coming over to gab with me. But I'm like, we have to be careful. I don't want everyone seeing me with you.
Yeah.
I didn't need it getting back to him.
Right.
But they were so wonderful. And I was part of the family immediately.
That's
and so when I did give my notice and he said that I can't leave and I have to give a month or two, and excuse me, huh? So he bullied me into 3 weeks instead of 2.
Okay.
No, 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 no. Don't do this. In the future, I would never have done that.
Yeah.
I can't believe he bullied me that I couldn't even leave. And he abused me verbally and written over the next 3 weeks. And it was horrible.
How come you stayed for the 3 weeks? You just left after
because of my clients.
Oh,
my clients.
Yeah, because
my coworkers. Yeah. And I stayed. And he didn't want the clients to know. Of course, the clients knew.
Yeah.
The clients didn't tell him that they knew,
right.
But the clients knew. He made it seem like he was getting rid of me.
Okay.
Whatever. My last day, you need to write this, and so I wrote whatever I had to write, and then he asked me to leave. And I didn't need a cake. I did, other people who left got gifts, this and that, nothing. 8.5 years.
Yeah.
And I brought in all the business.
Right.
And I left and went and had coffee with a friend, and
you must have felt, like so much, 10 years off your, additional years of life, and woof, beautiful.
And it's so interesting because the boss I had next, a wonderful woman. I worked remotely. They were in LA. I was in New Jersey. Wow. Set up my home office, and that was a good experience. It wasn't great. It was good. She supported me really through everything. Working remotely, a different lifestyle in LA. When I went to visit, the team would come in. The hours were 8 to 4. They'd come in at 8:40. Then they'd leave at 9:10 to go get a Starbucks. Then they'd come back and gab, and there's work to get done. And then they'd go for lunch, and then they'd watch the Ellen DeGeneres show. And it was like
so different. Yeah,
it was and it just didn't jive with my business approach. So when that door closed, I opened Andrea Pass Public Relations.
And that's recently. You said the last 5 years.
5 years. 5 years. What's exciting is I had my first client within days because of relationships.
Absolutely.
And my 2-word mantra, relationships matter.
Yep, they do.
And that's what's going to get you through any zig or zag in your business life and your personal life. Yep. Those relationships. Because if I didn't have those relationships, I wouldn't have had the gusto to go ahead and say, yes, I'm going to start my own company.
That's right.
And I'm going to be successful with Andrea Pass Public Relations.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to have great relationships. And I look at that, and my first client bought me my first set of business cards.
Oh, wow.
He was so funny. He says, no. I have to buy you your first set of business cards. And you know what? I'm still talking about him all these years later.
That's awesome.
And other people coming out of the woodwork to this day. There are people that remember me from things I had done in the past that find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Andrea, I don't know if you remember me, but we did this, we did that.
Yep, they're going to seek you out because of how you touched them in years. That's That's wonderful. And I give you a ton of credit for, it must have been such a challenge being a woman in an industry that was really 99% male, and you just knew how confident you were of your abilities, and you took a lot of stuff in stride, and you ended up where you are now. And I admire you for that. One thing I'm wondering, think about, since you can remember you wanted to go into PR and did it, do you think back for when the first you can remember being interested in that? What do you think molded that interest when you were younger? Do you have any idea, any thoughts?
It's so interesting because I always thought I'd be a journalist,
Hmm.
but I always wanted to make sure that the room was filled.
Hmm.
And so if you're doing an event,
Yeah.
why would you write about an event if people aren't there?
Okay.
And I think being the one to help fill the room, so to speak,
Yeah.
get the interest in the topic, share the topic,
Hmm.
reach new touch points and new audiences. Of course, I didn't know what that meant when I was younger
Right.
at all, but I think that the excitement of going down the neighborhood streets in the shopping district and
Yeah.
seeing flyers in the window
Right.
about an event and know that you put the flyers there, or to write an article for the weekly newspaper,
Hmm.
or to see that another media outlet came and covered the event because you called and invited them.
Right. Right.
So I always loved that when I was little, when I was younger. And, it was more like junior high and high school.
Well, it is a sense of accomplishment when you know you played a part in packing the place, right?
And I never realized it at the time.
Right. Right.
I just wanted everything to be successful.
Uh-huh.
If I'm working on it,
Right.
I wanted it to be successful. So
Right.
I think that goal has carried me through my whole life.
I think
And
it
even
has.
now in my business and my volunteerism, I want anything I work on to be successful.
Well, you know
And
what? In addition to the relationship piece, tell the audience how Andrea Pass Public Relations has become successful. Tell us about what you're doing now and what do you want the audience to know about?
wow, I mean, I love securing press coverage to increase brand awareness that
Mhm.
will ultimately drive sales. And I've met the most amazing people, from folks I knew
Mhm.
forever ago to current networking. And so my clients are this eclectic group. I'm representing a funeral home,
Oh, okay.
and I'm representing a high-end Upper East Side Manhattan Medi Spa. I'm
Wow. You talk
representing
about the
author,
difference.
uh,
Wow. That's like night and
life and
day.
death.
Oh my gosh. Geez, that's
So it's very interesting. I'm representing a fintech company.
okay. Wow.
I'm representing nonfiction authors and
Mm.
fiction authors.
Hmm.
I'm representing consumer gadgets. So it's so interesting that I look over these last 5 years of Andrea Pass Public Relations and the differences in the clients I've represented,
Sure.
because I don't want to be bored. I don't want to do the same thing all the time. And so by having these different types of clients, my day is exciting.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
not routine, it's not mundane. It's it's exciting to know. I mean, last week I did a TV shoot with a client of mine, and I was able to create a panel for this TV interview, which is airing in about a week or two, and really pose the way I wanted the interview to go by
Mm.
working hand in hand with the producer on things that I needed to happen during that interview for
Right.
it to be successful for my client.
Wow. That's fantastic.
And doing that was phenomenal.
Mm.
And then looking at awaiting a podcast interview for a client to appear, or a newspaper magazine. I'm back and forth with a newspaper
Mhm.
reporter right now
Right.
on a story that we want to run in a certain time period.
Mhm.
So we have to get some more information so she could finish her story for
Right.
this daily newspaper.
Okay.
Again, that will benefit that client. So you look at all of these, and I'm like a little kid when the press placement comes out and I know I'm the one that was responsible for that happening for that client.
Yeah.
And the reader or viewer or listener doesn't know that.
No,
They don't need to.
no, they don't.
But the client knows,
And you
and
know.
I know.
That's awesome.
And that's what's exciting. I have a client, I met their marketing firm on a networking call.
Mm-hmm.
I happened to be going to the Philadelphia area a week later. She said, I'll come meet you for coffee. We're sitting and gabbing. And she says, I really need to replace my current PR person. They didn't do this, they didn't do that. I said, well, I'm not going to bash anyone else.
Right.
I explained what I do instead of what he didn't do.
Yeah,
I'm
right,
explaining
yeah.
what I do, how I handle it.
Right.
Within 24 hours, she removed that person and hired me.
Mm-hmm.
And the client that she needed me for has gotten a number of interviews. I've provided information. She's so happy. She says, I've been with this other person 8 months who did nothing.
Wow.
You're with us 3 weeks and things are happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think when you do decide to go out on your own,
Yeah.
don't overload yourself.
Right.
I work on 4 to 6 clients at any given time. That's it.
That's manageable for one.
I don't want to hire anyone else.
Right.
I don't want to be responsible for a staff.
I understand all of that. Yep.
And that's okay.
Well, good for
I
you though
listen.
to know where your perfect spot is as far as the number of clients, so you want to serve them the way you want to serve them, and not compromise any of the integrity and the pride you have in your work. So I definitely admire you for that. I could talk to you forever, Andrea. I have 2 final questions before we let the audience know how they can reach you. So you are sitting down with young Andrea, 7 to 10-year-old young Andrea, and you've got some life advice that you want to provide her. What are you going to tell young Andrea, 7 to 10 years old, about life?
I think that I would say relationships change because when you're that age, you're so worried about who your friends are and who's going to pick you for the team. And are you going to be included and invited to the birthday party?
Mm-hmm.
And for young girls, that's a killer.
Mm-hmm.
It's the worst when you're left out and the kids are playing on the playground and you weren't invited, or you know there was a sleepover party, and you think that that is the end of the world,
right?
Because you're that age, and you think that the people, oh my God, I'm going to be alone, or I'm not going to be included. And relationships change. You will find your people.
Mm-hmm.
You will find your interest. You don't always have to be picked for the softball team. Or you may not find the right group of people at the Girl Scouts.
Mm-hmm.
You'll eventually find your peeps. It just doesn't have to happen when you're in elementary school.
That's great advice. Absolutely great advice. All right. So now you're going to put a different hat on, and now you're sitting with young Andrea, the entrepreneur or businesswoman, and you want to give her, before she launches her career, some business advice. What are you going to tell her?
Surround yourself with the right people.
Mm-hmm.
Even when you're a solopreneur like I am with Andrea Pass Public Relations, I needed to make sure I had someone who's my CFO. Mm-hmm. I had to get the right insurance. Mm-hmm. I had to get the right letter of agreement. Mm-hmm. I originally found a letter of agreement that was about 6 pages long. I lost a client because of it. Oh. The client had to have their lawyer review it. It took too long. Then I edited back and forth. He felt he needed to go to a lawyer. And my wording was not the right wording, even though I found this contract online and I cut and pasted. I needed to find the right contract. So that was my mistake. Mm. Also realize the things you need to spend money on, because we can't do it all ourselves. Mm-hmm. We need to find that. And I spend money on databases. Mm-hmm. If I don't have my PR databases and newsletters, then I'm missing a chunk of work I could do for my clients. Mm-hmm. Yet, when I started out, I did all these subscriptions to newspapers and magazines. And I realized I didn't need them all because I wasn't reading them. I could find the information on who's covering real estate or who's covering technology or who's covering authors by searching on the website.
Right. So surrounding yourself with the right people who have that information rather than spending it on stuff to do all the work would be the advice you'd give.
Yeah, like make sure, do your homework.
There you go. Yep.
Do your homework. And as I always say, relationships matter.
There you go. The mantra, the two-word
Mantra.
Yep. So the audience is going to want to learn more about you now that they've got the essence of Andrea Pass. How can they reach you?
Well, make sure you check out my new website,
All right.
AndreaPassPR.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Andrea Pass Public Relations. I'm on Insta, I'm on Twitter. I'm sort of out there, but the best bet is AndreaPassPR.com. If you have a business that you think needs PR and who doesn't, you want to be in the press because your competitor is and you're not there, schedule an appointment. Make sure you note in the notes that you heard me on Drew's show, and let's talk.
Wonderful. Well, Andrea, I am certainly grateful we're in the same community and I can consider you my friend. And I thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe and give us a review to help others find it. I'd like you to answer this question. Are you living the life you want to live, or are you living the life others want you to live? I'd like you to think about that for a second, because I strongly suggest you live the life you want to live. If you want to learn more about what I stand for and my services and how I'm able to help many men get out of their own way, please go to my website at www.profitcompassion.com. Feel free to also email me at drew@profitcompassion.com. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Take care of yourself and choose to write your own story instead of letting others write it for you.